Hello, friends. Welcome to No Cap Room. My name is Jake Fischer. I am a senior NBA reporter for Yahoo Sports. Joining me, as always, senior NBA writer for Yahoo Sports. It is my man, your man, everyone's man, Dan Devine. What is up?
Jake, I chaperoned a field trip for a class full of 6-year-olds today. We went to the Brooklyn Museum, learned about how to tell stories. I somehow managed to avoid telling them that I tell stories for a living. Didn't try to center myself in the experience of these children in the museum. But I got a lot of inspiration and a lot of kids that were like, what do you do? Why are you here during the day? It was hard to be like, I do a podcast sometimes. I write. Are you familiar with blogs, 6-year-olds? And they weren't very familiar with it. So they wound up just being happy that there was another grown up there to listen to them.
Well, this is the first day I've showered since God knows when. I've been pseudo bedridden / not really / pseudo quarantine / actually quarantined with my girlfriend following a COVID diagnosis / positive test. But we're here. We're here to keep going. If I sound a little more nasally than normal, that's why. But you always know that's great. What you're going to get.
It's good to have you back with us, and it's good to be able to get into this adventure on a Friday. It's sort of on the road to the weekend. We don't usually have getaway shows like this, but here we go.
Here we go. I have shaved. We have in-season tournament games coming tonight. But first, we have to talk about Dan Devine, his divine intervention impacting Joel Embiid's wallet. Last week, on the debut episode of Divine Intervention with Jason Concepcion, Dan begged, pleaded, implored the reigning MVP Joel Embiid to bring back the DX crotch chop.
I am hopeful for a return this year, though, of when Joel Embiid goes down after a basket and end one, a lot more crotch chopping. We haven't seen nearly as much Triple H, Shawn Michaels crotch chopping from Joel in recent years. Whatever the resolution is in Philly, I hope leads to a lightness of being that results in a lot more making an X over your genitals.
He did. He is now being fined $35,000. I'm questioning whether it was worth doing that against the Portland Trailblazers, but we're also questioning whether Dan will be paying the fine for him. Dan, this is your opportunity to respond.
Well, Jake, thank you very much for providing me this opportunity. First off, I just want to note the fine, the actual language of the fine I loved was Joel was fined for, quote, repeatedly making an obscene gesture on the playing court. It wasn't just the one, it was that it was repeated. That was really, I think, what got him in trouble. Because a journalist devoted to the ruthless pursuit of truth, I went back and I counted. I saw 4 discrete crotch chops, which by my analytics is $8,750 per chop. And Joel Embiid makes
or per crotch. Who used to say?
Joel Embiid makes $47.6 million this season. And I got to say, I feel like that's money well spent. It made me think of an old Drew Carey stand-up joke. He talked about when he would, like, when it was raining out, he would run stop signs just to make cops get out of their car, to see them have to walk to his car in the rain. And he said, like, what good is making the money if you can't enjoy spending it? I think that's how Joel Embiid thinks about his crotch chops. Yes, $87.50 is a lot to pay per chop, but you cannot beat the feeling that comes along with it. And I do see, I'm not sure if you put this in there or if one of our super producers, John Gennaro or Brett Rader, put it in, the question of, will I be paying the fine for Joel Embiid? It's an important question. It's one that's important for me to address. No, I will not be paying. If there were more, I did think about this. It's why I counted. If there were more, like many more than 4, so that the per chop rate was lower, I would consider it. If it was like, I would consider, Venmoing the Sixers or something, a couple hundred. I could see myself to doing that. But $87.50, no, I can't do that unless Joe Garza.
It does go to charity. It does go to charity.
It does go to
You're
charity.
You're saying you don't want to support any cause that is potentially worthwhile.
I really want to know who the crotch chop charity is. Let's find out which specific organization benefits from the crotch chop and the fines thereof.
I'll call Tim Frank right now. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, I'm sure he would be thrilled to hear from us about this. But the other option here is, like, I will absolutely pay it, provided Yahoo Sports will reimburse me for my expense. So Joe Garza, our editorial director, please, listen, I know he's listening. We'll follow about this later. If the company's going to be able to get my back on it, then absolutely be happy to do it. It's for a good cause. Maybe we can even get a company match of the donation to charity. Like really everybody gets well off this. So I think that there's a lot of good things that we can take away from this. Number one, though, my goal was I want Joel Embiid to feel happy enough and positive enough, a lightness of being, I think was the phrase I used, so that he would get back to crotch chopping. And clearly in the early season, this is what the Philadelphia Sixers have brought out of Joel Embiid. So you love to see it.
I don't usually air this stuff out publicly, but since we're on the subject and we're in the spirit of no cap room and we're having fun, maybe you paying it will also help change Joel's mind to talk to me for a little interview that I've asked twice now that he's declined. That would be maybe really help all sides here and further build the Yahoo Sixers Joel Embiid bridge, because we've done a lot of coverage of the Sixers. Myself, in particular, you wrote a nice thing about Joel and Maxey after the James Harden trade. Vinny Goodwill dropped something on James Harden and his legacy and blah, blah, blah. Harden is a Clipper. He is no longer a member of the 76ers. And we can go through some postmortem about why it happened when and who won the deal and sifting through the value and blah, blah, blah. I think the most important thing we need to get to right off the top is James Harden spoke to the media for the first time as a Clipper on yesterday. Thought there was a chance it was going to be happening here in New York when they're in town for like a long stretch next week, but it happened and it gave us some pretty brilliant sound bites. The first was that, the comment about him being, quote, on a leash or feeling as such within the Sixers offense, that was, to me, I received it as a direct shot at Doc Rivers.
Absolutely.
Being that they never seemed to see eye to eye, at least offensively, particularly because Doc was trying to force feed Joel the ball at the block extended in the high post and what have you. He's the MVP. I don't necessarily blame a coach for doing that. However, he was a large reason why Doc was fired. One, James Harden, and the hope that changing coaches and what have you would potentially mend those fences and bring him back and kind of keep this thing zagging towards beyond the second round, hopefully one day. And that didn't work. He opted in, he requested out, and now he's a Clipper, and he's saying that he is not a system player, Doc. That is me filling in the blank.
Yeah. That was like between the brackets in the story. Yeah. You added that in editorially.
I did, but he is not a system player. He is a system. And I saw, I think Ben Dietrich also make the joke on Twitter, but it would have been better if he said, I am a system, player. Just like, he is not a businessman. He is a businessman. But a quote for the ages, I know is a little bit longer than that. But look, I've had this debate with my extremely right-wing parents many a time since 2016. When you're a public figure and you make a full sentence on a microphone, you're kind of liable to having it be cut in the spirit of entertainment and news value.
Sure.
That was a pretty great quote. Pretty good quote.
Absolutely. There because everything has to be attended by a rush to the opposite side of it or to contextualize or whatever. Like, there was a lot that came on the other side of it. Like, well, he wasn't just saying, like, he didn't just say that. There was a full quote and there was full context. And it is fair to note that, yes, the full quote from Om Young-Masuk included, I think the game and I'm a creator on the court. So if I got a voice to where I can say, hey, coach, I see this. What do you think about this? And it's somebody that trusts me, that believes in me, that understands me. I'm not a system player. I am a system. So somebody that can have that dialogue with me. And that's the overarching, that's where the direct shot is at Doc Rivers. I think, like, it's not, and this is one of those, there are many things that can be true and multiple sides to hear, but like, I think the biggest takeaway to me is like, Doc Rivers made that decision because it was working. He said, like, Joel Embiid is the best player we have and maybe the best player in the league. And running through him is the way that where our offense is going to work best. And Philly, I think, finished third in offensive efficiency last season and scored like 123 points per 100 with the two of them on the court together. Their two-man game was one of the best individual plays in the entire league. So Doc's not wrong to have done it that way. But there's ways to do things that maybe make everybody involved in them feel a bit better about how they all transpired. And if Harden's response to this was, yeah, you're just kind of using me like a functionary, I'm like a machine that makes widgets as opposed to somebody who's like an artist who creates. You need to get the best out of that guy, and you need to be able to keep that guy motivated to give you his best to get to the desired result. That's what managers are about, and it's why coaches make what they make at the highest levels. And so I can see Harden chafing at that. I can understand why someone who has the self-conception, it's something you talked about when you were in Asia, and you were like seeing that Harden was not just like a star top 15 player, a like big flashing lights mega star over there.
Global icon.
Yeah. Like, so if somebody has that self-conception and it's backed up by some things in reality, they're not going to see themselves being like, yeah, my job is that I just shovel the coal into the furnace. I also need to make something. And I think that's, to me, is the most fascinating aspect of what's setting up in LA. If this is where Harden takes his big shot at Doc, and this is the way that, and like he's now being clear about what he feels, it's now on Ty Lue to figure out how to both get the level of production and efficiency and widget making out of James Harden that Doc Rivers did, but with like the magic trick of making James Harden feel like it was his idea. And that is an interesting place to have to be when you're also juggling the will they, won't they of when is Kawhi Leonard available? When is Paul George available? How is Russell Westbrook going to feel about all this? Is he going back to the bench? What do we do with our rotation? All those kinds of things. There's a lot. Ty Lue has had a lot to juggle since he took that job. This is an even, it's not even just like throwing another ball into it. It's like throwing, I don't know, something like a spiked chainsaw that is also somehow lubricated and is going to slip through your fingers. Like, it's a very complicated thing he's going to have to do. And I think this media session made it even more interesting and complicated.
I'm going to push back and say I don't think it's that complicated.
Okay.
Being that he is the connective point guard that they've been wanting for so long.
True.
That ain't Russell Westbrook. And I mean, they've been kind of on the market for this type of player for 2 years now. They finally get him. I think the opportunity to get Kawhi and Paul in motion before they're getting these touches, off of pin downs or whatever, like they're just gonna, I don't know. I feel like Harden is going to potentially be a tide that raises all boats, as opposed to, because the one thing that was so tough with Joel, that again really wasn't that tough because they were 3 seed last year and they came.
Yeah, they won 54 games. They were really good.
They came within, a little drop of the rope in Game 6, and then whatever happened in Game 7 away from the conference finals, and
a throwing away of the rope, whole full Pedro Martinez fastball of the rope to get away from it.
That being said, James Harden trying to fit into a pick and roll where he is not the best player in that pick and roll is not going to be the situation in Los Angeles. He's not going to be calling up Joel Embiid to screen for him play after play. He's not going to have to be force feeding one guy. The fact that there are going to be basically 4 high usage players who are just kind of twirling around the perimeter in whatever type of motion scheme that they come up with, I'm a little bit more bullish. I do think it's going to be more of a clash of personality than play style, especially when we've already seen the Kawhi melting to the floor, whatever he did when Russ fired that last second game tying attempt. But the personality stuff is what Ty Lue is, allegedly. I'm not saying that with doubt. I'm saying I haven't been in a Ty Lue huddle. I haven't been in a Clippers practice where I know that that's what he does, that he's able to relate to these players and hold them accountable and blah, blah, all those buzzwords and all the rhetoric that you can say to make any coach look one way or another. People say it routinely about Ty Lue and his ability to do that. So I don't know.
But I want to push back on that though, since we're pushing.
Please do. I think
that's exactly the point. So you're like, whatever scheme Ty Lue comes up with to fit all those guys together, what is it going to be? Because if you're like, yeah, he won't just be calling up the best player to go screen for him. What is he doing? What is James Harden doing when Kawhi Leonard has the ball? What is James Harden doing when it's PG and Zubats or whatever, when there's when the ball is in another high usage player's hands, creating something on the strong side of the floor, what's James Harden doing? Is he going to be ready to catch and shoot threes? He did that more often last season than he has pretty much ever, but still not very often. Is he going to be willing to go set a screen for somebody? Is he going to be willing to move without the ball? Is he going to be willing to defend his position without demanding switches every time? Although maybe he doesn't have to, because they maybe want to switch more often in that with the way the Clippers are aligned and what Ty Lue likes to do. I don't know. Yes, the managing the personalities is a big deal, but also the way the personalities get smoothed out is if everything is smooth on the court, or more, at least has a better chance to be smoothed out, the personalities if it's smoothed out on the court. And I think that's an interesting way. I think it's going to be the puzzle pieces of how that all fits together. I don't think it's clean. I think you're right that Harden is the highest level conductor and facilitator that they've had in this era. Absolutely. I also think he is a very particular type of conductor and facilitator. For sure. And he just told us, I don't like the way I had to do it last time. So then how do you get it different in this structure? And I think that's part of the reason for the timing of the trade is let's get the talent level and lift that up for sure. But then we might need all 65, 70 of these games coming up to figure it out. Because I don't think it's going to be as immediate and clean as maybe the talent involved would suggest.
Any other thoughts or questions you might have about the transaction of this all, the packages, just where things go from here? Just you haven't really had a chance to fully give your reaction on the pod waves. So we've talked about it in actuality and the coaching and whatnot, but just anything on the trade itself that you want to say or you want to posit.
Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to be a ruthless plugger and plug that if you the immediate reaction pod was you and Vinny, I thought was great. And if people have not heard that, they can go back in the feed and hear that. I wrote about it from the Sixers side and specifically how, as you mentioned, Maxi's strong start and the way that Embiid is passing and the way the offense is sort of reoriented for him to pass more was kind of a big reason for Philly to do the deal now. Ben Rohrbach wrote a really good piece for us at Yahoo Sports about the Clippers' gamble on it. You wrote about how it all came together. We had a lot of coverage of the angles on it. I think the interesting thing to me is that where it leaves, we talked about Joel finding joy. Joel was asked about about Harden's comments after the Sixers' Thursday night win over the Raptors about the idea that he was on a leash. And he said, and this is the quote from Kyle Neubeck at Philly Sports, "In my opinion, we gave him the ball every single possession because he's really good. He's an amazing player. Obviously, being that great of a passer, I think we gave him the ball. We'd give him the ball every single possession to just go out and, do his thing." And so this is multiple things can be true. Yes, Embiid is right. Harden had the ball all the time. I think he was number 2 in the league in time of possession last year. It's also that Harden had the lowest usage rate and fewest shot attempts per game he'd had since he was a sixth man in OKC. And so multiple, both sides of it can be true depending on which lens you're looking through. And I think how everybody perceived what just happened is interesting, but now also needs to go away. I'm interested in what the Sixers look like with, the ball is firmly in Tyrese Maxey's hands. He's got the keys, and we'll see what Daryl Morey is able to do with the reloaded assets. If he is able to pull off a move to get another star in there or another, high level role player or whatever. And then what the Clippers are, how they are able to put that offense together, I think is really fascinating. And the fact that they held on to their 2030 first round pick and Terrence Mann and Norman Powell, they might still have some assets to be able to move to if they see something else that they need before the deadline. But it's weird. I kind of feel like both teams have better championship odds now than they did before, even though that shouldn't be the case. But
why not? Trades are supposed to make both sides better, in theory.
In theory, yeah. But often when it's one all-star goes from one team to the other, that doesn't necessarily happen. But I do wonder if we've there's some not just addition by subtraction in terms of the vibes in Philly, but also they're going to be better suited to be a Nick Nurse style team with more length and versatility and depth. And then if the Clippers are going to be better suited to be a Ty Lue team with more ball handling and more shot creation and another high level player there. So it could be that everybody gets well from it. And then, Joel Embiid can just go, yeah, I don't know, and be honest and funny about the whole thing. And then eventually, hopefully, more crotch chops.
One last note on this, in the spirit of your usage of the phrase, both things can be true. I want to use that for two things. You said first that, Tyrese Maxey's play further emboldened the Sixers to doing this deal. That is not what they're saying. That's the message. The message that Daryl Morey said publicly that I've received behind the scenes is that was kind of irrelevant to this deal, which I think also leads the question to, there's been some reporting, Vinny said this pretty emphatically on our reaction pod, that this was kind of like a quote unquote ownership trade. Mm-hmm. And then there's also people saying, well, Daryl negotiated this. Daryl and Lawrence Frank were on the phone working through iterations of this for weeks and months and what have you. I think both things can be true there too. I think, yes. Do I think that happened? I heard that the basic framework of this deal had kind of been on the table for a little while. And ultimately the Clippers did figure out a way to make that 2026 pick become a reality for the Sixers. I don't know if we talked about this so much last time with Vinny, but the Thunder swapping a legitimate first round pick for a 27 pick swap the year later is just something that I don't believe I've ever seen before in my time covering the league. It's just a really wonky, nerdy thing to look at how this team that has 17,000 picks over the next 7 years, they're not going to be able to take all those players, right? That's such a cliche for people looking at assets around the league and looking at the pick tables and whatnot. And what better way to mitigate that issue than moving one of those picks to take a higher lottery ticket at the Clippers potentially? Because if the Clippers are terrible in 2026, they're still going to get that pick because it's the worst of 3 picks that the Thunder have, their own pick and the Rockets' top 4. But to bring it back to the Philly side of it, I do have it on pretty good authority that, at the end of the day, the powers that be, Josh Harris got on the phone with Steve Ballmer, other, I'm sure other factions of the ownership group too, just wanted this thing to be over.
Sure.
And I think it was a little bit more than your typical get ownership approval type thing. So I just wanted to tie that ribbon up and move things forward now with the in-season tournament tipping off tonight, Friday, November 3rd. All 7 games on Friday will count towards the in-season tournament. The NBA unveiled special courts that games will be played on for the group stage and the quarterfinals. It'll make it pretty damn clear right away if you tune on to one of these games that something different is taking place. A lot of these courts are absolute albatrosses. I'm not saying that in a bad way. Imagine the Boise State blue turf field on an NBA court. That's what you got in Indianapolis. All the red in Chicago and Miami. It's just going to be very, very interesting. We started to see these alternate courts pop up over the last couple of years. I think it really took off when we saw how easy it was to replicate an NBA floor and build new courts out for the bubble back in 2020. And now we've seen a bunch of teams do it with alternate jerseys. I think the Jazz were the very first team to bring it out with the jersey with that red on yellow on orange.
Yeah, the gradient, right? It was supposed to be the horizon or the rocks, that kind of thing.
For sure. So this will mark the first time that the Celtics, the Bulls, the Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Trailblazers will play on an alternate court in the history of the franchises. So, Dan, are you excited about this? It's going to be the conversation of the night and the weekend in at least the basketball world. And honestly, I think it has the potential to be, the courts are so outlandish. I think it has the potential to be gimmicky enough that it drives the conversation in the exact way the league is hoping for. Because this is propaganda. That's all this is. This is smacking viewers in the face with color schemes and clip art looking courts to be hey, something's happening here. So, are you buying it? What are your takes?
The thing I have to remember with this is when I've had staunch or really strong dug in feelings about changes to the game or changes to the season or changes to structures of things like that, that I know I can start from a position of being more of a traditionalist. Like, I like basketball and when people play it at a really high level, so I get to watch that. And then that's the thing that I enjoy. And so like, I don't necessarily need a whole bunch of seasoning on it. I just kind of like the game. But they already have me, right? Whether it's as a fan or obviously like doing this, like I'm going to be watching no matter what, because I have to.
Yeah, you're a sucker.
I'm a sucker. I'm somebody who has it's stuck in my ways, and I'm just going to be doing it. And I'm also a very good professional who does his job diligently. And
hey, I watched game film last night, this morning before our show, so I could be prepared for the second half of our episode here. So,
which is weird that I'm like, I want to commend you for that, because it's like that does seem like something that people should just do, be like familiar with what we're talking about before we talk about it, but not everybody. So Jake Fisher's putting in the work for you, the people. So I'm not who they're targeting this at. They're targeting it as you say, somebody who's flipping channels and will be to stop and go like, wait, what the hell is that? Why is the court and why is that court like yellow or a lime green and purple with a skeleton bird in the middle of it if the Pelicans are on TV? Like, they're trying to get you to stop and give it a minute to
propaganda.
Yeah, but like, I mean, yes, the league is doing this to try to intercept your attention and get you to focus on it. And the casuals are the ones that keep the lights on. And the casuals are the ones who, if the numbers go up high enough, drive the broadcast rights deal, which the NBA is trying to secure now and move it forward. Like, they're trying to package this as something that people will capture and retain eyeballs. So every one of these advancements, I mean, the most recent ones that I can think of were the play-in tournament and all the changes on the All-Star game, the Elam ending and the target scores and the player draft and all that stuff. Like, that's not for me, but the play-in tournament wound up being a good thing, I think. It led to more competitive basketball late in the season and more things to be interested in March. And so they're just trying to flip that. They're trying to replicate it and say, can we do that in November? When normally people are not paying attention, because that old adage, nobody really cares about the NBA until Christmas, right? Or until after the Super Bowl. And so they're trying to see if they can get ahead of that and like just grab a little bit more audience share during a period where they don't usually have it. As long as the games are good, I don't give a what court they're playing on. And so, like, to me, if it's red, if it's blue, if it's purple, if there's a skeleton bird, I keep going back to the skeleton. I think the skeleton's a really interesting aspect of this. If there's weird, huge trophies at half court, like, I don't care. If the game is good, I'll watch it. And I think that's what they're hoping, the hoping will come to pass here. We get the eyeballs with the bells and whistles, and then it's worth watching, superstar X, Y, or Z that we're trying to make sure are on the court through our new player participation program to keep the eyeballs there. And so, I mean, as long as the games are good, I think that's what's going to matter most. I don't really care necessarily about who gets what purse for making the quarterfinals or the semifinals or whatever. I don't particularly care about coaches getting money, although good for them. More people that can get more money out of the league, wonderful. I've made a career out of trying to get money out of people at the league. It's great. But I'm willing to remain open to the possibility that it'll be cool, because NBA basketball is cool. And when they play it, cool things tend to happen. But I feel like I've got more of a Pollyanna-ish view of it. And you seem like you're a little bit, as emphasized by you yelling propaganda 2 or 3 times, maybe you're coming up with a little bit more of a jaundiced view.
No, I think that I was in favor of the idea when it was still an idea. And then when what they came up with is what they came up with, I'm still like looking forward to seeing it. I want to go to Vegas. I believe I will be booking that travel in the very near future once I can
That's really what it boils down to, right? It boils down to you getting another Vegas trip out of this.
No. I don't want to go to Vegas any more than I have to. I want to go to Vegas to see these games.
Okay.
Because to me, what made the in-season tournament cool, what makes it awesome, is that we get single elimination basketball at the NBA level, which we've never really seen before. Sure, it's that high stakes and that entertaining because the playoffs are directly tied to it. And the advent of the play-in tournament has changed the league and the landscape of how teams are shaping their rosters and trying to compete more than anything the NBA has ever done, because it's tied to the playoffs. But to me, the format of the single elimination is what makes it awesome. That's why the NCAA tournament is awesome. And to just kind of slap that on the end, I think is good enough, but it's good enough to the point where my prediction, we get asked to make predictions all the time in this business, and I hate doing it, but this one I'm going to be proud to stand on the table and say this because it's going to come true. Mark my words. People are not going to care that much until game like 3 or 4 of the tournament when they're starting to get like knockout type situations. And then once we get to the quarterfinals and the Vegas portion, it's going to be awesome, and it's going to leave a really good taste in everyone's mouth, and it's going to seem like a at least a success in some degree. That's my prediction. But I think it can get better. I think they need to make it single elimination all throughout. And I think it will be even easier to do when we get to a point where the league does expand to 32 teams. It's exactly half of the 64 NCAA bracket. Mm-hmm. And it needs a better name than the in-season tournament. That's just what, like, the play-in is already kind of lame enough, but it's so close to playoffs. We get the TM play-in push. I think the in-season tournament and the fact that the play-in and the in-season, like, there's too much in. I need more out. I need more something. I need something more creative. Make it the David Stern Cup. Make it the mid-season classic. Make it something other than, like, I think it was Monica McNutt the other night who was on the ESPN broadcast who was just calling it the IST. Maybe that's even better than the in-season tournament, but I need a different name. That is my plea. I'm on my hands and knees asking Olympic Tower to change this name and to make the cup something cooler, because like you said, the money is not that important to the fans aspect. It is important to the coach. I mean, that is a big change. I think the fact that, I mean, if you're not Kevin Young and David Fisdale making $1 million as assistants in Phoenix, the average front of the bench coach is going to be pretty excited about claiming a couple extra $100,000. That will
absolutely
definitely add some more juice on the side. But what really matters is the players. A lot of these players aren't going to care about the money. Tyrese Halliburton told me in Manila, because that was the closest thing that I've seen to what this tournament format's going to be. He said he wanted like a guaranteed playoff berth. And I do think if the winner got a guaranteed playoff berth, I think that would be the ultimate way to make this thing. Or if it's like you get a playoff berth and you get to pick your opponent or something like that. Sure. Something with the playoffs. That is what the play-in tournament ultimately is all about. Boils down to the two things again: the single elimination games and the fact that they have ramifications on the playoffs. So just replicate that here. It's so simple. And if you make it single elimination, you actually lose games as opposed to adding a regular season game for the two teams in the championship game. I know that's a whole other podcast about revenue sharing and what have you, but yeah, like that to me, those are my takes. That's what I think we will see this year and what needs to happen moving forward to make it even better.
Yeah, I think that those are totally reasonable to me. I think, yeah, the idea that of making it all like the action is the juice, single elimination, it makes a ton of sense to me. I imagine the argument against that is like you're trying to package a number of games as a product to a broadcast partner, and you need to be able to deliver a certain amount of inventory and guarantee a certain amount of advertising slots and yada, yada, yada. So like, as always the case, like they're never going to say fewer games because they want more money. And so like, I don't, I imagine that's the argument why it wouldn't happen there. But everything else, it makes me think of, again, going back to the All-Star Weekend stuff. Like, I mean, maybe we should think about this version of the IST. Shouts to Monica McNutt, guest of Vinny Goodwill on The Good Word recently. We should think about this maybe as like a beta test. This is like the version 1.0 of whatever this thing is. Like, here are the ways we're going to market as a different product or a different thing, and then the NBA has shown over the years, with like the Elam ending and going from US versus world, rookies to sophomores or whatever, like the drafts and yada, yada, yada. Like we can always tweak and iterate on these things. And so if there are versions of it that could be, add excitement without retracting revenue or whatever, maybe they'll keep messing with it for the next couple of years. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, they're like, actually, like they just did with the All-Star game, we're going to go back to basketball, and it's just going to be, like we're not going to do something particularly different with it, or we're just going to go back to basics with it, and that might be fine too. Like, I don't know. I just keep coming back to the idea that like what people want to see is cool happening as often as humanly possible. Like right now, the most talked about and interesting team in the NBA is San Antonio. And that hasn't happened in my lifetime. As good as the Spurs have been, that has never happened in my lifetime. But cool happens every time you watch the Spurs play. And that's what, so like if you are seeing that on whatever the in-season tournament games, whatever court they're playing on, wherever the final games are, single elimination, double elimination, group stage, whatever, people will follow it. They'll find their way to it because that's what draws people, eyeballs, like, or things that draw your eyeball, like the stuff that's going on with the Spurs right now.
Yeah, we need some situation like San Antonio knocking off Phoenix in back-to-back games to really rile the troops, because that is what happened in the Valley. The first game, if you missed it, on Tuesday night, Victor Wembanyama put back the trap in the corner. Keldon Johnson steals, dunks, finishes. The Spurs win. The Spurs win. Thursday night was even more impressive. Like, that was just like fun. Thursday night, the Spurs showed just how good this thing could actually look when it's fully weaponized, where they were up 20 for a large stretch, more than 20 for a large stretch of the opening first quarter. Devin Vassell continues to look Devin Booker-ish, even as Devin Booker's on the court. He got hurt, did not play in the second half.
Get well soon, Devin Vassell. We need you back on the court pronto.
We need you healthy enough for me to potentially interview you next week when the Spurs come to New York.
We're just going to keep speaking these things into existence.
Exactly. But no, I think the most important thing, the most awesome thing about last night was like the Suns clawed back. They tied it up, 116 all. And then Victor Wembanyama went toe-to-toe with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a crunch time battle on the road, and he won. It was like, I mean, I don't want to call it like a coming out party, but that's been by far the most emphatic, statement that he's made about his game being NBA ready from the ultimate vantage point, as you like to always remind us, Dan Devine, actual basketball games and actual winning, not just ideas, not rumors. Winning games. And holy hell, was that awesome. I've had some notes jotted down on my phone. I did some homework. No, I just jotted down a couple of reactions. Okay. But
I'll take whatever you give me, brother. That's fine.
What do you got first? What is your takeaway? What are your takeaways from watching this 7'3", 19-year-old slay two future Hall of Famers?
First, I need to be honest with, I'm looking right at the camera right now. I need to be honest with the audience. If you're watching us on YouTube, you see that I'm looking right into your soul here. The question was posed in our rundown as we were getting ready for the show on Thursday. When do we start talking about the Spurs potentially being a playoff team? And my immediate reaction on Thursday afternoon was to scoff, right? And my note was like, I think it's probably when they're not in the bottom 10 in the league in both offensive and defensive efficiency, and when their starting lineup isn't getting outscored by like a point a minute. So I was like, here's my jokey way of responding to this. And then I watched the game on Thursday. And after that game, I tried to be honest with myself. And I feel like I've tried to be careful about this with Victor Wembanyama, and like to pump the brakes and to err on the side of caution and logic and sobriety about how much can you possibly expect from this guy this early, and so on and so forth. I no longer want to be sober about Victor Wembanyama. I want to be drunk on Victor Wembanyama. I want to get hammered on Victor Wembanyama. It's unlike anything we have seen. And I don't mean that like, this is not prisoner of the moment stuff. Like, I remember LeBron James coming into the league. I remember Kevin Durant coming into the league. I remember Zion Williamson coming into the league. Like, this is different because of the dimensions being different. We've literally never seen somebody this big who does these things this well, this fluidly, this fast. 38 points in your game in the fifth game of your career on 15 for 26 shooting, finishing things off with like a stutter rip sidestep 3-pointer that you pull up and splash. Like, people aren't supposed to be that big and that long and that skilled and coordinated. It's not supposed to happen. And it's happening. And there's been so much evangelizing about it. And all of it is justified. All of it is completely legitimate. And, the things that were wrong with the Spurs or issues with the Spurs are still there. Like the starting lineup when they're playing the giganto ball. I talked about it with Zach Lowe on Divine Intervention this week. But when they're playing no point guard, it's Jeremy Sohan and everybody's huge. And they don't have enough shooting. They don't have enough collective playmaking. But They're defending like at a top 10 level with that unit on the floor, and they're going to get better. Sohan had 9 assists and a turnover last night. Pop's still getting Trey Jones in there to make sure there is service happening.
And they shot it pretty damn well in the first half last night.
Yeah, I was like 75 points in the first half last night or something like that. Like they're and Wembanyama he's only going to get better too. Like they're also learning like, oh right, just throw it at him. Throw it in the neighborhood of him, and he will reach 8.5 feet above the rim and direct it downward. He will, if we throw it to him in transition, he'll go get it. Like they're realizing what they are playing with, and it's in real time. You see everybody going like, "Oh my God, we can do that," and they can, and it's been remarkable to see. I've never, and then to your point where you say like they got punched back. There was a couple games ago, they go to the Clippers, they just get, punched in the mouth. They never get back in the game. They lose by 40. They threw the punch in the first half, put up 75 points or whatever it was against the Suns. And then the Suns claw back, and Devin Booker is back, and he's looking like Devin Booker. And then Kevin Durant comes back in the game, and it's tied. And it's tied with 4:15 left or something like that in the game. And Wembanyama goes and just takes it. Every possession from there on out is about him. When he arrives on the court, the entire game revolves around him, even when he is sharing the floor with some of the best players ever. And we haven't seen him, like there will be teams that are able to scheme against him. There will be better big guys that he's got to play against. There will be more physicality that he'll have to deal with. So he will deal with the foul trouble like we saw on opening night. But the possibilities that are opening up are unlike anything we've ever seen. And so I can look at it and say, I don't think that team's good enough talent-wise, top to bottom, to be a playoff team. Who cares? Maybe they don't have to be, because you're talking about rising tides that lift all boats. They don't make him any bigger than that dude. So I mean,
it's a tsunami. It's a tsunami rushing the shores of San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, what's French for tsunami? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. I'll have to Google that later. But there's no reason not to dream as big as possible, I think, at this stage. And the only reason to do it would be to zag right now. And nobody likes the guy who zags. Shut up. Enjoy the thing. Enjoy it while it lasts, because I don't know that. I mean, if this lasts this way for the foreseeable future, everything we know about the game is going to be different.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team, but they're going to be frisky as hell, and no one's going to want to play them if their playoff hopes are on the line. That's kind of the bar that I think they've definitely crossed no matter what, especially when Yuta Watanabe's parents came into town for this game and they just had to watch their hopes and dreams of the Suns' victory get torn apart by this man's massive hands, his gorgeous shooting stroke. I think, a couple of notes that I jotted down on my notepad from this morning. One, he runs the floor so well. He looks tired all the time, and he's still out there. His legs don't even look like they're moving that fast, but his strides are so long. There was one first quarter run out where Sohan fired it from the left side of half court, all the way to the opposite block, and a great pass by Sohan, but also just no one can keep up with this man. His gait is just so much bigger than everyone else's. The guys, you want the guys to reward him. There are also so many plays where, because he's running the floor so well, or that one play where Trey Jones dumped it back, then Victor took off from basically the foul line and dunked on the entire stadium. That could happen way more often. Yeah. And you're just sitting there. I haven't had this experience as an objective observer of the league. I on coffee, I had 7 cups, and I'm just jittery, hoping that he's going to get the ball, because there's so many times where maybe just the angle isn't there. From the TV view, it seems so clear. You could just kind of flip it over your shoulder and he's going to dunk on everybody. But that is exciting from a curmudgeon at my old age to have some joy again. The passing is remarkable to me. I hadn't really seen him do that in the game I watched in person, and the stuff I'd seen from Metros while I was watching it on the NBA app. I don't even know what the assist totals were, but just the way that he is able to do little touch passes and just kind of be the bigger Domantas Sabonis, not bigger, but larger Statue of Libertying it, holding the ball above everything and picking out guys, is just something that we've never seen. And a non-Victor note, Zach Collins. Shout out Zach Collins. He's back. He looks good after 3 crazy years of just a lot of lower body injury stuff. You know, when the Spurs won the lottery, it was like pretty consistent pretty early that like the Spurs envisioned starting Zach Collins at the 5 next to him. And like at first I was kind of wondering if that would be the right call. The Giganto lineup, you seem to kind of have been skeptical of it yourself. But I think the way it also allows them to just kind of hide Victor on defense has been very interesting. Like, it's not even like they're doing it to have him be the back line, weak side. They're kind of just sparing him on that side of the floor, which maybe that could be like a little bit of a detriment to his defensive development. You could make that argument, but I think they're also just like, it's just not heaping too much onto his plate while his legs are still super frail and his arms are still super teeny. And like seeing him next to KD, who's kind of like, to me, the closest archetype to what he, from he's not a traditional big man. That's just not what he is. He's definitely gravitates more towards the perimeter. He likes to handle it facing up, especially even pretty much all of his touches that he gets in like the short corner or the block extended on the baseline. Like, he likes to square up. It is Durant-ish to me. And like, so yes, in those pictures where he's dwarfing KD and it makes it look like an average pedestrian compared to what Wembanyama stands, if you want to take it a step further and more analytical, like KD was, you know, obviously so criticized throughout his younger years for his own strength, you know, the infamous lack of bench pressing at the combine and all that. KD never bulked up, but he definitely, you know, had some more just overall oomph added to his frame. And like seeing how much bigger Victor is in terms of height and length, but also how much smaller he is in terms of strength. Like, I'm not envisioning a Giannis type glow up from Victor, but you could just see also that there still is a little bit of tone and mass that KD has over him that you wonder when it's multiplied by 7'4", how imposing that truly will become. So it's exciting. The Spurs are basically must-watch basketball right now.
Imagine saying that sentence at any point in the last, 25 years, and then immediately getting a whole bunch of people being like, well, I guess you just don't care about good, well-played basketball. The beautiful game. Watch this 11-minute YouTube clip of passes. And you're like, I know, I like it too. But also, this is different. And you guys now see that it's different, and you know it, and you love it that way too. A couple of things before we move off of this, because honestly, I don't think we should move off of Victor Wembanyama very much at all. Again,
you should move to San Antonio and just start becoming the intrepid beat writer.
Yeah, there's great people covering that team already for the San Antonio Express News and other areas. So I don't want to horn in anybody's territory, but I will be watching an awful lot and reading an awful lot. You mentioned the KD standing next to Victor thing. Shouts out to my friend Alex Wong at Steven_LeBron on Twitter from the Raptors show up in Canada. He wrote last night, he's turning every NBA player into a Yao Ming Muggsy Bogues photo op, which I thought was great. It is true. It is the way that looks. And a couple of stats, because we talk about homework, kid, and I do my homework before we go on. Wembanyama right now, obviously everything is very early. It's only 5 games. He's on pace to be the 3rd player ever to average more than 20 points and 8 rebounds in fewer than 30 minutes a game. The last one to do it was Embiid in 1920, when there was like oh my God, Joel Embiid is here and it's real. And then the only other one was Clyde Lovellette in 1959. So we are seeing things that we do not frequently see. Wembanyama, you mentioned they kind of hide him on defense, or they're able to move him off the ball and kind of keep him out of harm's way. He's still making a gigantic impact there. He's on pace to be the 9th player since they started counting blocks, with a block rate north of 7% and a steal rate above 2%. There's not very many guys that have done that. Some of them are specialist kind of guys like Nerlens Noel, but 2 of the other names that jumped out on that list, David Robinson and Akeem Olajuwon. So that's kind of the lineage that we're talking about here. He is currently 5th in the entire NBA in 4th quarter scoring and 3rd in the NBA in clutch scoring. So final 5 minutes, score within 5 points, 21 points on 7 for 10 shooting in that. Like, he's already their best option. Like, he's 5 games into his age 19 season, and they're like, well, we got to get that guy the ball. Like, it's unbelievable. And there's no adjective or adverb or whatever you can throw on, no honorific you can throw on top of it that does it justice. All we can hope for is that we get to keep watching it. And we'll be tuning in for it because, as you said, he has made by himself the San Antonio Spurs must-watch TV.
The last little subject for us to discuss today of relevant news and updates, the Miami Heat are 1-4. There was a lot of hand-wringing about, are they going to be good enough with not getting Dame, with Gabe Vincent walking out the door, with Max Strus walking out the door, for a team that was not very good during the regular season last year, and they are not very good during the regular season right now. They lost to Brooklyn 109-105 on Wednesday. I mean, their only win was a 1-point victory over the Detroit Pistons, who looked fun and young and exciting, but they're struggling too. I mean, they got pretty bruised up against the Pelicans last night. It's just not looking bright. Kyle Lowry has been just on a downward slope pretty much since he arrived there. People were hoping for Josh Richardson's return and maybe back in the culture he could reclaim what fooled the Sixers into thinking he'd be a piece back for Jimmy Butler in a sign and trade, what fooled every team after that, what fooled our editor Joe Garza when the New Orleans Pelicans acquired him at the trade deadline, and Willie Green has started throwing Josh Richardson into clutch time. I mean, Bam Adebayo, I know he's a good facilitator, but I'm still feeling like there's an untapped element to this Heat offense when he's just kind of operating stuff from the elbows instead of being a downhill attacker. I don't know. They almost didn't make it out of the play-in last year. Like we can look at it like that, or we could also look at it like they made the finals. Both things can be true, to go back to our theme from earlier. And Tyler Hero's playing super well. Like, the efficiency is there, the scoring is there, but are they just... is this just what the Heat are? Or are there little levers that Spo can pull? Do we just need the next iteration and generation of the two-way Sioux Falls guys to find their stride and become Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and Duncan Robinson and Haywood Highsmith and what have you? Or, like, are we looking at a team that really is in danger of missing the playoffs?
I would say it's more, I'm closer to the former than the latter. Part of it is just like, I think it's too early to give up on what Erik Spoelstra is. And there's nobody in the league that is better at coaching his team over the course of the season to get them ready for when the time is right than he is. It's worth noting, Jimmy missed a game, Bam missed a game. A lot of their other rotation guys, like you mentioned, Josh Richardson, he's only played 2 games so far. Haywood Highsmith only played 1 game. They've had guys in and out. Jimmy has been off to a really slow start, only shooting 36% from the floor. We know that Jimmy will round into form and his game will pick up. The Kyle Lowry question is interesting because like he can be fine. Like, he's shooting 42% from 3, but he's taking 5 shots a game. He's not giving you a whole lot of offensive generation. He's not shot creating. He's not like there's a reason that was the area that the Heat wanted to improve upon dramatically. And so I would imagine they will continue to hunt for opportunities to do that. But the like cold take or the lukewarm view of this is, let's give them some time to get everybody together. Let's maybe see how they look in a stretch where they're not playing. Like, they got beat by the Celtics. I mean, the Celtics look like they're, on the roll to a 82-0 record right now. They lost to a pretty good Wolves team. They've lost by 8 to the Bucks, like on the road. They lost to a Nets team that's been playing pretty well so far. Like, they're 1-4. They've only gotten like boat raced once, and that's with guys in and out of the lineup, and Spo trying to figure out how to reorient they also haven't had Caleb Martin at all yet. So, like, not that he turns them into a 5-0 team, but let's see what it looks like when everybody coalesces, and there, the schedule gets a little bit more friendly and a little more home frequent. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly not the start you wanted, especially in an East that looks like it's going to be pretty crowded. If what you have to cling to is, we were a 44 win team with a negative point differential and it didn't matter. Like, that's true, but Jimmy's a year older, Lowry's a year older. You're really depending on your ability to find those guys, those diamonds in the rough, and or for the rolls of the dice to go your way. And at some point, they're going to go snake eyes. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be this year. And I think once you get a representative Jimmy Butler back for them, I think the tide starts to turn.
Last thing before we get out of here, new segment I want to try. I want to call from the inbox. We get a bunch of silly press releases all the time in our line of work that I'm sure our fans don't typically, the NC Armada, the NBA fans don't typically receive, because why would you be getting press releases? Some of them are so silly. And look, they say all press is good press, so I don't want to flame these press releases, but I want to kind of poke some fun and add some awareness to the causes that are filling up our emails. So we've got 2 on the rundown. There's a third that I think is better than the third one, so I will slip that in there after.
Okay.
The first one, we got an email, I believe it was last week, with the headline, "Breaking. Tim Duncan signs exclusive partnership with Panini America," to which there was a quote attached. It's a definitely real quote from Tim
100%.
Duncan. The quote says, "It's been years since I've had an autographed trading card. I felt it was time to return to the industry so fans could get the chance to get cards with my signature. Trading cards have come a long way since I last signed them. Panini America has developed some really cool cards and brands while taking the popularity of NBA trading cards to a whole new level, so it made sense to partner with them." I ask you, Dan, how do you think trading cards have come so far since, I don't know, 2010? How far have these trading cards come?
I mean, my first thought is that NFTs have been a part of the space. I don't know if that's
true.
something, I don't know. And weirdly, like, I can imagine Tim Duncan getting really into that. Not so much about, like, Tim Duncan's not the guy who's like, I'm going to make money off this, but he's the guy who really wants to explain to you how the blockchain works. And him being like, no, there's a distributed ledger. And this is the thing.
Beautiful game.
Really, you have to understand, it's going to change the whole game. I've never heard Tim Duncan say this many words in a row ever about anything. Maybe about like a car that he restored at his garage in San Antonio or something like that. When I read this, I was like, no one has ever not said something more than Tim Duncan did not say this. But if you are somebody who likes trading cards and you like Tim Duncan and you have a lot of respect for the really cool cards and brands that Panini America has developed, then the good news. This is peanut butter meets chocolate for you. Put them all together and you're going to have a delicious time. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, is any of this real? Like, is any part of this a real thing? And I remain skeptical about it. But I guess, listen, Panini America, prove me wrong.
The only way that Tim Duncan said this is if someone wrote this down and then handed it to him and said, "Hey, please say this out loud."
And he has to hold up a newspaper with today's date as a proof of life while he's doing it. Like, yeah.
Yes. So we got another press release claiming to have detailed data on the most dangerous arenas in the NBA, which I didn't think would be good. There's a lot of crime information about what happens in and around that no one benefits to stay on that. But bookies.com sent me, I don't know if they sent you, because I get all these press releases.
Well, you're also a power user of bookies.com. That's not something that I do personally, but I respect your right to do it.
I don't use bookies.com. Bookies.com has calculated the cost of attending NBA games at each arena this season and determined that a family of 4 will spend on average $304.64 for 4 tickets.
That's not how you say money. $304.64. $304.64 is not a thing.
Correct. I'm just reading and my brain doesn't work. It's the brain fog.
All right, come on. You've been fine for an hour. It's not COVID now.
$304.64 for 4 tickets, a parking spot, 2 sodas, and 4 hot dogs, which leads me to ask you, who buys a hot dog at an NBA game? Especially nowadays when we've got all these more, maybe this is why. Maybe it's to show the lowest possible barrier of entry for food at an arena, because we got fried chicken sandwiches now, we got fuku, we got barbecue cutting stations. The hot dog, I haven't seen somebody eat a hot dog at an NBA game since like 2006.
So Jake, here's what you're missing. The framework here is a family of 4. So who eats the hot dogs at the games? The kids who won't eat anything else, right? So I can go bring, when we went, I took Siobhan and Olivia to a Liberty game over the summer, and it's like, all right, well, let's go. We're at Barclays Center, which has all of those many things there, right?
Well, you want to get pizza as opposed to like weird combination of meat wedged into casing?
The thing is, pizza is always good, no matter what, right? But the way pizza tastes varies place to place, and so some places have thin crust, some places have whatever. Hot dog is pretty uniform quality wise, and so like as long as you're not, I mean, so that
the devil you know is better than the devil you don't,
and especially with kids who can be picky eaters or who can be sort of frustrated at the idea of trying something new in a different situation where they're in like an uncomfortable new place or whatever. Yeah, hot dog is like the path of least resistance. Hot dog or chicken fingers and fries is usually the path of least resistance. So yeah, I would imagine that's why they set this up. And then like, am I going to buy 4 hot dogs? Are my wife and I both going to get hot dogs? Probably not, but what invariably winds up happening though is like we will wind up eating whatever they don't eat, because that's what happens. That's why every parent you see is more bloated than you expect them to be, is because we're eating whatever the kids will wind up leaving behind.
The last thing from the inbox is not what we have written down. I'm going off script because
going rogue, ladies and gentlemen. I'm scared.
Listen,
Bookies.com got to him.
When I was younger, the NBA socks were what everyone, they were just like so far ahead of every other sock technology. But other things have caught up. We have Stance now. The Nike Elite socks are great. But now the NBA is taking a different undergarment to the next level, partnering with Kim Kardashian's Skim, which, look, could be the biggest news in NBA history. Because as much as you want to, anyone could say anything about the Kardashians, that those are business women. They know how to drive product, how to drive sales.
They're not system players. They're a system player.
Exactly. So they also put out a new like nipple bra like the same day. Don't think it's a coincidence. Think there's going to be a lot of stuff to come from the Kim Kardashian partnership at the NBA. I'm waiting to find out more. I'm going to text all the high-ranking people that I know to find out and give the people what they want. What the Kardashians are doing to the NBA underwear in an equipment room near you. That is my next task. Dan Devine, any final words for our listeners before we get out of here?
I mean, you can't just say they came up with a nipple bra and then just like walk. Like that's like throwing a bomb behind you and then walking away as it explodes. Like I know what I know about this is I know
apparently
that
it's fashion now.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like one of the main, sort of the forward-facing models and ambassadors for this. So like the NBA collection is there. It is kind of funny. And I made a joke about this on Twitter, I think, but like it was kind of funny to think about like the stack of dominoes going over, and it's Jordan Farmar introduces Kim Kardashian to Chris Humphries in 2010. And then, 14 years later, Kim Kardashian is the official underwear partner of the NBA. So the amount of things sense. That happen. Listen,
a butterfly flaps its wings, and then
right. And then
nipple bras are in locker rooms across the country.
Nipple bras are in locker rooms across the country. Gosh, my main takeaway is that I am now going to spend the rest of my Friday into this weekend hearing you say nipple bras, and I don't appreciate that one bit. So thanks a lot, press release senders of the world. You just did this evil to me.
There you go. That's all we've got for you today. Hopefully you also take many a thought from our show into your weekend, just like Dan Devine will do. Thanks to super producer Brett Rader for filling in today behind the glass. Please follow us on various social media platforms that are out there. I am at Jake L. Fisher. That is at Your Man Devine. And subscribe to Ball Don't Lie on YouTube, whatever podcast platform you're currently listening on, and leave us a 5-star review. That would be great. We thank you for listening. And we'd appreciate it if you came back again next week for another episode of No Cap Room.